Why do you think most folks quit so quickly? Why is it that it becomes this, even after one, there's so many people who just bail on it?
I think a lot don't get coached. When I'm dealing with people, I set them up. I say, you need to come plan this for the year, not to just kind of wing it. And I tell them when to schedule it and everything, and how much time it's going to take, and the quietness that you need as well. You can't actually be doing a podcast and you have a child screaming or a dog barking every second, because then they kind of realize, hey, this isn't good. Or you expect with the thousands of social media people, when you start, you'll have thousands of people coming in, and then it's a reality check. It took me 3 weeks to get to 100, and I was going around to people going, and I think that's a thing as well. People kind of expect, they're looking at Mr. Beast, they're looking at Rogan, they expect to see millions. They just assume that, oh, this is going to be successful because I'm good at parties and I've got a good personality. If you go into a room and speak at 10 or 20 people, you'll go back next week and you're happy out because you're going, wow. But people, for some reason, when they see the numbers on a podcast, they don't register them as people. They think it's nothing. And I think that's one of the reasons people just kind of go, this isn't going to work.
Welcome to the show, Roy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Michael. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for taking time to lend us some insight in what you do. Where are you calling from?
So I'm living in a place called Łódź in Poland, but I'm Irish, so I'm originally from Cork in Ireland, which is in the south of Ireland.
My wife and I just did a 3-week tour of Ireland and Northern Ireland. We rented a car and just drove counterclockwise around the entire island. It was so much fun.
Did you bring your umbrella?
Did not. No, we brought our raincoats, though. The only time we actually ran into rain was on the coast when we were on the cliffs. That was like the only 2 rain days we had the entire time. We got very lucky. Excellent. Yes. But yes, it is. You can definitely tell it rains there a lot. The green that is in Ireland of the grass is so bright. It is amazing. So anyway, we're not here to talk about Ireland today, though it is a very cool country. If you have not been there and you have a chance, please go. Today, we're going to talk about coaching coaches on podcasts on a podcast. Yeah, you can't set this up any better than this, right? Here we go. So, Roy, you have been a very successful podcaster, and it sounds like you've done a lot with guesting and hosting, and now you're teaching other coaches primarily, but executives, anybody who's looking to get that personal brand out there, is maybe some authority marketing, and teaching them how to make the best of their podcast experience. So one of my first questions when I talk to folks like you is whether it is better to start as a guest, or should we start as a host of a podcast when we're getting into the podcasting arena?
That's a nice question. What I'd nearly recommend do the tour, because you will learn from so many different podcasters, because they all have different forms, they all have a different style, and you can then create the best from that. And also you'll overcome the fear, because I recommend people do the video as well, because you're missing out on a channel. A lot of people just want to do the audio. And by doing that, you'll overcome it, and you'll actually start to like it, and you'll see what's good, what's bad. You'll understand the timing, how much it's taking, because the other thing is, even if you're only turning up, like today, when I talk, I listen to a few of your shows. It's something I do, and a lot of people do that. So if you're going on a show, you should do the homework as well, because you're respecting the actual podcast host. And then you'll realize, because if you're interviewing someone, you'll be doing the same thing. You'll be actually looking what they're doing, checking their websites. If they've done a TEDx, you'd listen to it. You go, this isn't a 5-minute thing. So it sets you up to realize the amount of time that you're going to be putting into this if you want to be successful, and not just kind of bail after 10 episodes.
Right. And, I have a friend who owns the company Podmatch, Alex Sanfilippo. And I was asking him, he was on my show not too long ago, and he told me that what you're describing is like starting a podcast and then quitting a podcast, which they call pod fade in the industry, right? For our listeners. And he was saying that you would not believe that like over 50% of podcasts don't get past the first episode. Isn't that crazy? I was just like flabbergasted. People spend thousands of dollars on coaches just like you on how to get one started. They buy all the gear, they do all the things, and then they get past one and go, no, not me. Isn't that crazy? Why do you think most folks quit so quickly? Between 1 and 10 is very common answer for this question, but why is it that it becomes this, even after one, there's so many people who just bail on it?
I think a lot don't get coaches because if you have a
Mm,
coach, that's because when I'm dealing with people, I set them up. I
mm,
say, you need to come plan this for the year, not to just kind of
mm.
wing it. And I tell them when to schedule it and everything, and
Right.
how much time it's going to take, and the quietness that you need as well. You can't actually be doing a podcast and you have a
Mhm.
child screaming or a dog barking every second, because then they kind of realize, hey, this isn't good. Or like yourself and myself, because I was listening as well, that you expect with the thousands of social media people, when you start, you'll have thousands of people coming in, and then it's a reality check. It took me 3 weeks to get to 100, and I was going around to people going, hey, will you listen to my podcast? I was like, it was like the first mark was 100. And I think that's a thing as well. People kind of expect, they're looking at Mr. Beast, they're looking at Rogan, they expect to see millions. They just assume that, oh, this is going to be successful because I'm good at parties and I've got a good personality. And then they see maybe 3 or 10. And if you go
Oh
into
yeah.
a room and speak at 10 or 20 people, you'll go back next week and you're happy out because you're going, wow.
Right.
But people, for some reason, when they see the numbers on a podcast, they
Mhm.
don't register them as people. They think it's nothing. And I think that's one of the reasons people just kind of go, this isn't going to work.
Oh my gosh. And the thing is, I think so these expectations that are just unreasonable, right? Unreasonable expectations or kill a lot of things in a lot of businesses. People think, "Oh, I'll build it and they will come," type of thing. And that's the same mentality that I'm listening to you describe here. But I also think that people have a misconception of how many listeners you need to have to be successful, depending on what you're trying to do with your podcast, right? So help us understand the different if we're going to think about now hosting, like we just talked about, like I did exactly what you were talking about. I was on over 100 podcasts before I decided to host my own. And I said, hey, listen, I'm a marketer. You know how many marketing podcasts are out there? A lot, right? And I'm like, if I'm going to do a podcast, it's got to be something different. So with the Buzzworthy marketing podcast, I didn't start that until I'd done over 100 guest speaking, and I took your advice. I picked out what I loved, kept out what I hated, and I scheduled a lot of time. And I also played with having just me as a monologue, so a solo podcast, and having guests. And I've had some great guests like Mike McAllowitz and Gina Wickman and some other folks that are well known in the B2B space in America. And now we've settled on, after doing it for about a year and a half of back and forth, this year, we're doing solo, right? Which takes even longer. People don't realize that when it's just you, there's a lot more work.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is. But I feel that the value that we're bringing to the show is there. And now we're in the top 50 marketing podcasts in the United States. So, and we have about 30 to 35,000 listeners or downloads per month, with over 1,000 followers on Spotify. We don't know how many we have on Apple. The numbers are weird on that one. But anyway, with that though, I'm using it as an authority builder. What are other ways we can use podcasts, hosting for our business?
Well, you're doing it very well, because when I was listening, the way that you're actually saying, hey, we get a free come in consultation stuff, like you have a lead generation. So many people don't do that. So there's different ways. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you selling? I mean, sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
like what I say to people is, they're saying they're doing a tour, and I said, it's better for you to go on shows, because, for example, you might have a certain niche. You can invite the specialists in. You could
Mm-hmm.
try to be reaching out to them and you might never get them. But if you're inviting them to come on your podcast, you've
Mm-hmm.
then, because you build a relationship. I mean, you know yourself.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you can be years later and you're still in touch with people, and you've got each other's backs. So then
Right.
you might only have 20 listeners, but you could be reaching out to the people that are ideal clients, and you could be talking six figures or something like that for some of these deals.
Sure.
They come in and they like your style, and then you
Yeah.
get them. So that's another way. And I mean, like sometimes even books and stuff like that, people promoting the book, they're going on the tours. Do they get the sales that they need? Not sure, but they're getting themselves out there. So when people are
Yeah.
doing a search, it depends. If you're doing the branding
Yeah.
as well, if you want to be doing the branding, it helps with
Mm-hmm.
with the show as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree 100%. When I wrote my first book, that was when I went on the tour, and it made it very easy to get on shows. So even if you self-publish, you can get on podcasts really easy. And the funny thing is that I was on a show with a very popular home services marketing guy. His name is Tommy Mellon, and it was a great conversation. We had a really good back and forth because there were things that he was saying that I was like, maybe not that way, and so we are just kind of bantering back and forth. I got, in a 12-month period, 4 referrals from that. 4 people reached out to me after listening to my episode in over a year. I don't think people realize how long their content is viable in podcast land, because we're so used to social media being, oh, that was so 5 minutes ago, right? No, we're talking 4 direct links to that one of 100. Out of that, there was over $70,000 worth of value in business that came from that one interview. Like, people don't realize how much money can happen. But the secret, and I want you to tell me, what's the secret though to getting that value back?
Well, there's one kind of in relation, because you said the tour, and I know a lot of my say clients I'm getting doing a tour, they go, "Oh, it's a new show. I don't really want to go on it," and I'm like, "You don't know what you're missing out on." Because I look at, like, I've 6 podcasts. Some of the show, like one of my Polish ones, it gets more. The first episode gets more than any of the other. It's at 55,000, just one episode alone. Like, and like, I know, I look at them, I look at the stats, and some of the earlier shows, people go back and they might start binge watching, or they'll just
Mm-hmm.
go back and go, "Hey, we'll see what this was like at the
Mm-hmm.
start." That's the time that you could actually get way more downloads. And as you say, you could be getting sales for years later that you're going, where are these coming from? Unless you're asking and tracking it. So it's very important. Never kind of judge. And I'm not sure if you do it as well. Like, when people go, "What's your numbers?" It's like, for me, I don't like when people ask me that. I don't give out the numbers, because it's like, you have to come on, and you have to come on a mission. And even if we're having a conversation, we touch one person's life, that's good enough for me. But there's some people, and they want to be on so many. And like, if you look at their own kind of, usually the people that are like that, they've no social media themselves. The people that want to
Oh
be
my
on the
God.
million, and they want, and it's like, for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's like, not, you're not coming from a place of heart for, sharing the
Mm-hmm.
love, sharing the message. You're just coming
Mm-hmm.
for take. And like,
Mm-hmm.
value your podcast as well, that
Mm-hmm.
when you're doing it, because there'll be people coming in, and they'll just come in, or they do a sales fest. I mean, I don't know, have you had that? I've had a guy that every question I asked him, he was telling me how his marketing was, because he was doing internet marketing. Every single question was that. So I didn't post it, because he wasn't serving the audience. And you have to
Uh,
remember to look after your show as well, because
mm-hmm.
if it's your baby, it's like a radio show. Don't just put it
Mm-hmm.
out thinking, "Oh, this is grand, this is going to." You have to make sure that you're serving the listener, and always take, because a lot of the times, whether you're doing a podcast tour or you're doing your own show,
Mm-hmm.
always remember the listener, because a lot of the times people, they just forget, and they just chat away, and it's like, remember
Oh
that
gosh.
there's a room full of people, and would you be
Yeah.
talking the exact same way? Because most
Yeah.
people don't. And when you take them into account, and also, like, say, the analytics, I mean, I look,
Mm-hmm.
all of my episodes, this 50% at least in the States, and UK is big as well. I make sure that I'm covering stuff connected with that, because I'm serving my
Yeah.
audience. I know it's not
Mm-hmm.
that I don't cover Ireland. There's a bit there, and there's a bit in Poland and everything, but I have to look after my listeners. And and
Yeah.
some people don't even know where their stats is. If you track
Yeah.
everything and know where it's coming from, then you serve that, and then it grows as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's something you said. It's like, is coming from the heart. And some people get into the mindset thing and they kind of get like, oh, this is too woo woo. But really, it boils down to serving an audience, right? And remembering that you are now in the ear of an individual for anywhere between 20 minutes and an hour. And if you serve them just like if you were at coffee, trying to show them how you can help them. And how do we do that? We have a giver's gain mentality, right? And I think that a lot of people go to pitch versus just give. And there was a gentleman that told me, he's like, yeah, give them 97% and then you charge them for the 3%. And I told him, well, I find that if you give them 100%, and they go yes, there's technically 3 things that can happen from there. They take what you told that you just taught them, right? And they're going to go do it and they execute it flawlessly. That person was never your client. Number two, somebody goes and takes what you have, goes, tries it, and fails as miserably, then calls you. Awesome. Or they look at that and go, that sounds hard. I bet you he would make it easy. And they buy you direct. Okay. So you have a 2 out of 3 chance of the person contacting you sooner or later, right? Because sometimes they have to fail for a while before they go, all right, Buzz, what did you not tell me? And you know the beautiful thing about this is if you're a 97 and then sell them the other 3%, you get caught with your hand in the pickle jar when they come back for the advice. But if they're at 100% and you show them that you gave them all the 100%, you just didn't have the expertise, didn't know which questions to ask. So I really love the fact that you're just like, if you're not serving, you're robbing the listener of their time because they don't get the time back, and you're robbing yourself of the opportunities you could have had if you just led with giving. What's another secret to being a awesome host?
Well, one, as I say with the question, like for example, you probably have some agencies as well. And I say, I don't want you to fill it out. I want the client to fill it out. And
Oh
they
yeah.
don't understand this, but I have to explain it nearly every time. If you're doing a podcast tour and you have an agency and you want to take the easy way out, you fill out the form for me and everything. What you
Mm-hmm.
get is you get 100 interviews that sound
Mm-hmm.
the exact same because they're all asking the exact same question and you have very little content. And what I say is, so many times with my form, I'll say, what video should I watch? What's the best? And they give, and I say, send me pictures, send me funny pictures. And sometimes I can bring up, sometimes I'd have a page of notes and I might
Uh-huh.
never even, I'll just go off on a tangent based on something that they've done. Whereas an agent will just cut and paste what, say, if it's on Podmatch or one of the other
Mm-hmm.
platforms,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and then they're just kind of chugging through, and they're not really there either because they're just looking at it as a business. Whereas when they're filling it out, they're kind of seeing your style. They're looking at, whatever way you're doing things, the kind of professionalism when you're doing it. And every time you do it properly, you get a lovely review. But then
Mm-hmm.
they're way more inclined to share it as well if they've got a big newsletter. Because if it's just normal, they're not going to share a podcast with 50 different podcasters when it's all the same stuff because it's not showing a different light to them. Whereas I always get something different out of them, and they're like
Mm-hmm.
delighted. And then I plus a thing I do that most podcasters don't. I share the pod. I tell them after a month because I don't want them to share. Like I'd like them to kind of promote mine as well. But I say after a month you're able to put it on your own channel. I create
Mm-hmm.
shorts. I also share that as well. But what's strange
Sure.
is very few actually say, "Oh, great, give them to me." They don't realize the value of the shorts because
Yeah.
that's. And I mean, I'm
That's
putting up stuff.
free.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
That's free gold. That person just like if it's the host doing it themselves is huge. If they have a production manager that's doing it for them, it's still good because they're trained on what the host is looking for. Like I personally still talk to hosts. So if you were to reach out to me and say, "Hey Buzz, I want to be on your show," you're just talking to me. I don't agency that stuff out because if I'm on that many shows, I actually had a guest who I think ended up using like their people, and he was on the show looking at his phone the whole time. You could tell that this was an interruption in his day. It wasn't his idea. And so he gave me, okay. And this dude is a deca millionaire. Like this dude is rich, right? And I was looking to be impressed with him because I found that my guys who are like really successful are usually the ones that give me better because they don't want other people to go through the stuff that they went through to get where they are, right? They want company, right? This guy didn't get it. You could
I
tell he's
call people
extremely
out on
transactional.
that. When people do that, I call them out on it. I won't tolerate that because this is my. I'm serving people, and when I see
Right.
even I've had really famous people on, and even say they're really dark or in the sound quality or a fan. Like one guy, he'd written over 80 books, and I was like, "You have to turn off that fan. You have to do this. You have to do this." Because
Oh
I
yeah.
said
Yeah.
I'm looking after my show, and if I see somebody that's just not switched on, I pause it and I go, "Are
Mhm.
you actually?" Because I said I'm not going to. And you just see them, and then they shock, and then they come into the zone. But like what
Mm,
I say is, you have to call them out in it because sometimes we go, "Oh, he's a billionaire," whatever they are.
mhm.
We're dealing with it, the individual, and they need to be
Yeah.
taken down a peg if they're doing that because they're not respecting you by doing that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like that, and just don't tolerate it. If you have a show,
Yeah.
don't tolerate it.
Well, the crazy thing is after the interview, I even tried to engage him because I'm like, wow, I'm really interested in what you have to do. My wife and I have been talking about what this guy does, and he completely didn't hear it. He just went. He like skipped over what I had just said and said, "Hey, my assistant will be here to wait until this thing uploads, and I got to go." He didn't even hear me tell him, "Hey, I'd like to do business with you." Isn't that crazy? Like, don't be that person. This is what me and Roy are telling right now. Do not be that person. You're nobody is. If you're that successful, don't go on other people's shows. Like, if you think that your time is more important than giving 100% attention to whom you're talking to, one, it's rude, like you're saying. It's just rude. Two, it's robbing people of the time they'll never get back because it's a commodity. You can't replace it. Time, right? And so now you're making the host look bad if that's going there. And I think you might have talked me into just not airing that show.
Yeah, I've done a
Because
few
if I
times.
see it, if I see the recording of it and I see him looking down while we're doing it, you know what? You're right. I might just say, you know what, screw it, and never, and don't worry about it. Like, why am I spending my time if you're not willing to give me at least the 20 minutes it takes to do the interview? Why am I letting my people spend hours making it look really good for you?
There was another
Right?
one that I had at the time. The bugs. People have the bars with all the bugs, and I said, okay, that's a
Mhm.
hot topic. I'll get this guy. And I don't know, did he just crawl out of bed or he was planning on going to bed? But the energy levels were brutal. And I was like, but I said, okay, this is a hot topic. I want to get it. But I felt like I just didn't enjoy it. I look at the analytics, it dropped to 8%. And I was
Ugh.
like, I should have listened to my heart and not put this out. And I put it out because I thought, I'm after doing it and I think it's a hot topic. I hurt myself. And it's like from now on, it's like I just don't make sure you enjoy it. Because I don't know, I edit all my I've done over 1,500 uh, episodes with my six podcasts. I edit them all. And the reason being is one, I'm at a different level even if I outsourced it because I know, like, if you say something to me and I'm making the note, like you
Mhm.
could say gold and it could run over someone else's head. So I'm putting the show
Mhm.
notes, and then when I upload it, then my team just take it from the YouTube using ClickGrab, and they can. But
Yeah.
I don't want to outsource that, and also I don't want to outsource comments and stuff like that because
Mhm.
someone can say something that can be really valuable, and it can just go over somebody's head. So yeah, there's a time you get to so much comments and different things, and yeah, you've general ones, that's okay, but you have to. I think when you're doing your show, you have to look after it and pay attention to what's being said and your listeners, because sometimes they can give you great feedback and you can just make it. Like for example, one of mine, it was like sovereignty and stuff like that. Like I was just seeing, okay, ooh, people are really interested in that. So then I'm ensuring I am having a lot more of that, which in turn makes the show more popular and people sharing it because that's a topic that they're really interested in. I was listening to, but sometimes we just do what we feel is right and we just blast it out. And it's like, if you pay attention, it can really help your show.